Welcome to the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, where we unlock the secrets to motorsports sponsorship. Here's your host, Josh Weesey.
All right, well, welcome to episode 47 of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by ImpactFuel.org. My name is Josh Weesey, and I'm here to guide you through the complexities of motorsports sponsorship. To help me with that today, we have our featured guest, Cody Bradbury. He's a Polaris RZR racer. You're going to hear all about his background in Heat 1. But before we get into the podcast and also the structure, I have a few things to talk to you about. The first is basically about ratings and reviews. I would love to get your feedback on iTunes. So if you'd be so kind, head over there, leave a rating, leave a review. And also on whatever podcast player you use, go ahead and subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any of our upcoming guests. Now, our next guest is going to be Thomas Affelt of Sledders R Us. Following him, we'll have Matt Allred of Garage Built Racing. And then I'm really excited that we're going to have a special guest for our 50th episode. This is going to be the first time we've had a returning guest to the show. Now, I haven't announced this to anybody yet. There's only a few folks that really know what my plan is for the 50th episode. But essentially, a fan favorite is coming back on the show, and that's going to release on November 21st. So stay tuned for that announcement. Now, to get some insider access to the podcast, go ahead and check out the Sponsored Rider Club on Facebook. And if you request to join that, I'll review that request. And essentially, if you're, into motorsports at all, and I can tell that from your profile, I'm probably going to approve that request. If you ever have questions about the podcast or specific guest recommendations, go ahead and shoot me an email, podcast@impactfuel.org. Now, this episode is brought to you by three awesome companies. SolderWeld, they produce game-changing metal bonding technology products. TopThePodium.com, they're experts in motorsports sponsorship. And then Bold Racing and Suspension, they're a family race team and custom suspension experts. Now, the structure of this podcast, it's set up like previous ones, where we will begin with a qualifier, which is a basic introduction. In Heat 1, we'll dive into Cody's background. In Heat 2, we'll talk about sponsorship tactics and strategies. Then in the main event, we'll discuss mindset, and then we'll end at the finish line where we get closing comments, and we'll figure out how to get a hold of Cody. Now, without further ado, let's hop in. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast. Today, I'm joined by Cody Bradbury. So, Cody, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. As Josh mentioned, I'm Cody Bradbury. I'm 28 years old. I live in Nuevo, California. It's a pretty small town in Southern California, kind of the mecca of off-road and motocross.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, honestly, prior to starting this podcast and diving deeper in the motorsports world, I had no idea how big, the off-road industry was in, Southern California and Phoenix and Vegas and, that whole region. And gosh, the more and more I dig into it, the more people I talk to, like that's where it's at.
Yeah, it's big open areas mainly. The trucks are fairly good size. The side by sides are starting to get pretty big as well. So you need a lot of space to go out and have fun, and those are the areas it seems like majority of the people are out using the vehicles. So
yeah, definitely. Well, cool. Well, in Heat 1, we are going to dive a little bit deeper into your background and really get your story. So I kind of want to start off by understanding how you first got started in kind of the motorsports world.
For me, it was kind of a family atmosphere, really. My dad rode three-wheelers and motorcycles as a kid, and it was something that he got us into. I mean, originally I started racing BMX. I think, most kids from Southern California, that's kind of the route they go. I raced BMX when I was younger. I think I started about 5, and then, I always had quads and stuff like that, but started to get a little more serious and race dirt bikes from 7 till about 16 or 17. I raced dirt bikes, and okay. I have an older brother, so he raced with me, and then my dad, as much as he could, he was working, so he would come home from work, during the week and, take us out to the track and practice and all that. But it was never really, I never really thought it was really going to go anywhere. And as as we raced, it got more and more competitive. Like with anything, you get more and more serious the more you do it. But just a few string of injuries, honestly, kind of, put me back. My brother broke his collarbone. My dad broke his collarbone. I broke my collarbone, all within a couple month period of each other. So my mom kind of cut us off from there, and from there it was kind of let's go get in the cage, get on four wheels, and be a little bit safer. Mm-hmm. My dad in the beginning of 2000, during 2005 and 2006, we built an unlimited truck to race in the more off-road racing series that just races in the the California deserts, and mm-hmm. we did that for a couple of years. I shared driving duties with my brother and my dad and that. And in 2007 we won the championship, and in 2008 we missed a couple of races and still took second. So it was good. That was really my first my first go at racing four-wheeled vehicles. I had always been around them. My family had gone to Glamis, and my dad had a couple long travel dune buggies and stuff like that, as I was growing up. But that was really the first taste of, racing four wheels. And when the economy kind of dumped out there in 2007, 2008, my dad, he owns a small construction company. So the funding was kind of done from there. I didn't really have very many sponsors, and it was all pretty much self-funded. So the racing kind of came to a halt in 2008, at the end of 2008. And I took a few years off there, and had some fun, got married, and started my family, and started working. I got out of college, and I went to work. And in 2013 my dad saw a little flyer for Dirt Series. It's a small side-by-side series in Southern California, and he said, "Hey, you want to go check this out?" And that was a couple months before the race ever even was going to happen. And I'm like, "Oh yeah, we'll check it out. We'll see, whatever." I didn't really think much of it. And he the weekend before, he said, "Hey, that race is next weekend. Do you want to do it? Because if you're going to race my car, you need to take some of the parts off it so you don't break them." And man, I showed up there, and had a decent time. It was a two moto format racing, so the first race there, I think I got third or fourth, so it wasn't bad for me, and I overall third for the day. So it was it was like, oh, okay, I think this could be pretty fun. It was one of those things where these guys had been racing with each other all year, so for me just to show up, it was it was a little bit different, and I got beat on a little bit and broke some parts. And after that first race, we decided that, okay, maybe this is something we're going to do. So we built a race car, and man, kind of the rest is history from there.
Well, that's cool, man. I want to dig in a little bit there. So you took a little break, right? A couple years, got married, and you said you had kids too during that time?
Yeah, no, I mean, my kids, I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. So
okay, so that came later.
They came after I started racing. So they've been born into it, and I feel bad for them because they know nothing else and what they want to do. So it's one of those things. It's like anything else. Your kids want to be like you, and you try to be the best example you can in that aspect of things. So
yeah, no, that's cool, man. I just kind of want to call it out because I think it's hard to make the decision to go back into racing, right? I mean, especially you kind of separated from it, and you said, I got another life here. I got a wife that I got married to here. I got a job, building a career. Why would I go back and race? And so I think that's pretty cool that you were able to make that transition back into that program. And I don't know. I think that's cool.
For sure. It's it's one of those things that's hard to get away from. It's in your blood. I've done it. I've raced something in some fashion since I was 5 years old, on and off. Yeah, I've had, a year or two off here and there, but for the most part, it's always been something. I've always been racing something. So it's something that, it's not the easiest thing to walk away from. It's kind of been bred into me as a kid, whether my dad did it or I wanted it so bad that, that I did it. So, it's a lot of work, and, some people think I'm crazy, but I'm still enjoying it and, loving every second of it for sure.
Oh, that's cool. So when you decided to race your dad's car, was it? I'm assuming this was like you said, what 2012 or 2013? I'm assuming it was like a Razor 900 or something.
Yep, I raced a 2013 Razor 900. It was actually set up for Glamis.
Okay.
It wasn't really set up for racing. I raced that first race and I took third or fourth, and from there it was kind of like, okay, we brought it back, took the cage off, redid it, put some put some better bumpers and Nerf bars and stuff like that on it. A friend of ours, a guy my dad went to high school with, he built dune buggies and different things over the years and worked for Walker Evans and Nelson trucks. So my dad knew him, and he built the Razor for me, and we started from there. But it was one of those things where it was completely new to me. The Razors, they were awesome. They were fast. They were, great out of the box there. But once you started beating and banging on people and bumping wheels and stuff like that, there was just certain parts that failed, and, things that needed to be replaced. And, you're going to have it. You take a production car and race it. There's going to be certain failures. There's just no way around it.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did is, as I broke bits and pieces, I just, replaced as much as I could afford. And, at the time I didn't have any sponsors. That was, in the beginning of 2013 there. And I, for the first couple of rounds, would do good in one moto and then would tear the car up in the second moto. So
Mm-hmm.
my finishes weren't that good. And then I can remember it like it was yesterday at Kahia Creek. For whatever reason, it just finally clicked. I kind of got the car dialed in and changed a few parts that I needed to do. I mean, for the most part, it was still a production car. There's just a couple small parts that I needed and changed. And I won both motos by a pretty decent amount. And I did it from coming from the back. I didn't get the whole shot and I had to work my way up. So that was kind of like, that was the turning point for the season for me. And I won every single moto the rest of the year and ended up winning the championship by a couple points in my first year. So it was good. It was fun. It was a learning process. Yeah, it was frustrating in the beginning. It's one of those things where you gotta kind of figure it out and, stick with it.
Oh, that's awesome. You racing 2013 there, you got a win your first season. What happened after that? So let's see what happened from that season to 2017.
From there to where I am now, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster. 2014, I raced Dirt Series again. I switched and built a brand new Polaris XP1000. That's when they came out.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up winning the championship again in Dirt Series in that pro class. And I dabbled a little bit in works. I didn't do too much. At the end of 2013, actually, I raced one pro race at Glen Helen in my 900 and ended up taking second. Piplick actually beat me there, and so I was like, oh yeah, I should give works a try. This should be kind of easy. I was able to get second in my first shot, and man, it's been tough. The competition in works. It's anyone that shows up to a works race knows that there's 5-6 guys that can win on any given day, and everyone's gonna pretty much push 150% to do that. So
right.
It's not easy. But in 2014, like I said, I won the championship. 2015 switched over to works full time. I had some good finishes, different races. I was on the podium. I didn't get any wins that year though, so that was a little bit, it was a little bit different for me. It was hard. I won a lot in Dirt Series, and there were fast guys there, but I think works. You got RJ and Piplick at the time, and Bo Barron, Mitch Guthrie, all these guys. They're all fast. So it was a little bit of a, in Dirt Series where you had to deal with 1 or 2 guys. Here you're dealing with 5 or 6 guys. So it was definitely a little bit of a learning curve, a little bit different style of racing. So in 2015, the season was kind of a write-off for me, really. I had an up and down year. Yeah, I had some good finishes, but definitely not where I wanted to be. And going into 2016, I was still racing the same car. I didn't build a new one, so I felt like I had a little bit of a leg up on some of the competition just because I changed the car around over that, our break there during the winter. And I started out good. I think I got fourth at the first round in 2016, and was on the podium multiple times. Won some races. Sand Hollow is I don't know. I guess I'm kind of getting a name for myself of being good in the sand. I've won at Sand Hollow a few times. In 2016, I won the Pro Turbo class and the naturally aspirated class there. So it was from there had a decent season. Toward the last round, actually in Prim in 2016, I had a little mishap with another guy, and I ended up upside down at about 60 and got knocked out and had to go to the had to go to the hospital and do that whole thing. They checked me out, everything was fine, but I was in the points chase for the the naturally aspirated class, the non-turboed class. And that race actually raced after my turbo class a couple hours after it. So took a trip to the hospital. They did some CAT scans, did a bunch of stuff, and I checked out. And I'm on my way back to the track, and I told my dad, "Hey, I think I'm going to line up and race." And he told me, "No way, dude, you're not racing." And I don't know if it was a good decision or not. Hindsight, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have. But you know what? I went out and I drove around and ended up taking sixth in the class that day and ended up on the podium for the series. So had I not raced, I would have been out of the top three in the podium. So, 2016, it was I don't know, it was a pretty good year. I mean, third place, I had, I didn't have any factory help. I did have, I had some sponsors, people that helped out, but I didn't have any factory help. And that's the guys I was battling is the guys with the factory help. So it was, it was good. And actually towards the, right there before that last round, I think it was in September of last year, I signed my contract with Polaris to join their team and to be a factory guy. So it was, my season was good enough to catch their attention. And so that worked out for me.
That's perfect. And I actually want to talk a lot more about your interaction with Polaris and, some of your other sponsors as well. But right before that, I would like to take a quick minute to thank the sponsors for this podcast. I hear it constantly from racers that a good suspension setup is absolutely critical for performance, and that's why I'm going to talk to you next about Bold Racing and suspension. Now, it's really critical to understand your suspension, and there's so many intricacies with the valving and the shims and all this crazy equipment that you need to actually, rebuild and properly set up your suspension, that it's really important if you're ready for that next level of performance to partner with an awesome suspension company. Now, Bold Racing is that company. They're not only specialists with their suspension setups, but they also partner with companies that produce amazing custom components. And on top of that, they're a family race team. They actually race themselves, so they really understand the type of beating that your vehicle and your shocks can take. So what I want you to do is give them a call and just chat with them. Talk to them about suspension. Their number is 702-506-5354. If you're not ready for a phone call, go ahead and shoot them an email, bold.racing@yahoo.com. I am constantly asking the guests of this podcast how they attract and retain sponsors. And on almost every single occasion, somebody gives an example of a resume. A rider or a racer resume is extremely important to your overall sponsorship pitch and proposal. And it's tough to do. I mean, it's not really the easiest thing. Anybody can go through and put together a resume, so don't get me wrong there, but it's really difficult to get something that's like unique and different and stands out, and then also is something that can be put across multiple platforms. Well, that's one of the things that I want to talk to you about next is how topthepodium.com can actually help you build a race or rider resume that can be used on multiple platforms. I'm talking like website, PDF, something you can print off that's interactive, that looks fantastic. It looks absolutely professional. Well, that's because it's made by a professional. This is the type of thing that's going to set you apart from the crowd, and that's going to position you for a strong sponsorship proposal. So what I want you to do next is go to topthepodium.com, and if you have a question, there's a little chat icon that pops up on the side of the screen when you go to topthepodium.com, and you can go ahead and type your question right there. Jeff Vanestal, he is the owner of Top the Podium. He's going to be able to respond to you directly, so check it out. Have you ever been out on the trail or at the track or in the middle of the desert and something breaks? Well, of course you have. We've all been there. But a lot of people at that point, they reach into their trusty toolbox for the duct tape or the zip ties or wrenches to fix their machine. However, there's a feeling that you get when you realize you need more than just duct tape to fix that rock chip in your radiator. That's a horrible, horrible feeling to have. And that's why I'm going to tell you next about SolderWeld's metal bonding products, specifically alloy sol. So this product gives you a longer term fix than JB Weld, which is just going to get you back to the trailer or back to the pits. With basically the assistance of MAP gas or propane torch, you can quickly and easily repair an oil cooler, radiator, AC line, or any crack or hole in aluminum. And better yet, alloy sol flux is the only flux in industry that cleans and decontaminates the dirty and greasy surface for you. So you don't even have to worry about that part. The alloy sol rods are actually capable of a 30,000 PSI fix, and they're stronger than even the parent metal, and they're built to last the lifetime of the part. So don't let a simple radiator leak leave you out of the race or broken down in the trail. Bring along some alloy sol aluminum alloy repair rod and flux from SolderWeld. All right, well, welcome back, everybody. We are now in Heat 2, and we're going to talk about sponsorship, tactics, and strategies. And, Cody, what I want to kind of start off with is just kind of get an understanding of who some of your current sponsors are.
Yeah, you know what? I have a good list of people behind me. I got a great group of people. First and foremost would be Polaris. They stepped up in a big way for me this year. Wholesale Capital Corporation. It's actually the company I work for. They do home loans and we do refinances and stuff like that. But they came on board. Walker Evans Racing does my wheels and shocks. They've been awesome. Holtz Racing Products. They build my cars. They shipped everything to me, and I built the cars in house. I did them myself, but using all their products. GBC Tires, Bradco Construction. It's my dad's construction company. He's been there, since day one, kind of funding the program and, helping me get started to get where I am today. Grant Steering Wheels, Suspension Direct, K&N Air Filters, Magic Custom Graphics. They wrap my cars. Vassar Racing does my exhaust and tuning. Johnny Cross does motors and stuff for me. So, man, it's just, I have a pretty good group of people behind me, and they're the people that make it all happen for me.
Oh, that's awesome, and I think it's a really cool list, and I like that there's a mix of non-endemic and endemic sponsors. I mean, it's cool having people in the family supporting. I think it's really interesting having your day job business that you work for, like that company supporting you, and and then all these other big names in the industry. It's phenomenal. I think it's just a pretty cool mixture of sponsors.
Yeah, no, you know what? It's good, and it's nice to get some some sponsors that are outside of the industry. There's a lot of people racing, so you're gonna get these companies that are inside the industry, Walker, Holtz, GBC, all these companies that are inside the industry. They get flooded every single year with sponsorship proposals. People want to be sponsored. There's a lot of fast guys out there. So, so to kind of go outside of that and try to, gain some sponsors, get money from companies that have nothing to do with the racing side of it, but they look at it as, they're getting advertising. People see the stickers on the side of the trailer going to the races, or, people at the races, obviously see the cars and things like that. So it's good. I don't know. It's been good. I've actually been fortunate enough to have a blend of people outside the industry and inside the industry, sponsors wise, it seems like my whole career. So that part's been good for me. And, obviously, with Walker and Holtz and GBC, these other companies, that make parts for these cars, they're going to be in the industry. You need to get help from them. They make the parts that you want to run. So that's kind of that side of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing that I like to highlight in these podcasts when people do have sponsors from outside the industry is the motorsports industry is big. It's huge, but it does have some limits to it. Outside of the industry, though, it's just, I mean, it's phenomenal how big, the world is. I mean, there's just tons and tons of opportunities out there. You just have to find the right companies, build the right relationships, and you can make some pretty unique connections.
Yeah, no, I mean it's been awesome, and like you say, there's such a big world outside of motorsports. There's companies all over the place. I mean, you drive down the freeway, you drive, you just drive around, drive around town where you live and look around. There's companies everywhere, and those companies make money or they wouldn't be there. They're operating in a profit, and that's kind of the way I look at my sponsorship, or I look at how I want to build my program. I want to build my program with people that that enjoy off-road or enjoy that aspect of life, even if they're not in it. My boss here at Wholesale Capital Corporation, I walked into his office one day and just presented it to him. Work was over for the day, and he was in there sitting by himself, and he's done some sponsorship stuff in the past. He does a lot of charities for wounded veterans and things of that nature. So he has a charity, and I asked him. I walked in and said, "Hey, this is what I'm doing. What do you think? This is how many people it'll be in front of. This is what you'll get." And he's like, "Yeah, sign me up. Let's do it." That's probably one of the easiest sponsors I've ever got. And but it started with a relationship. He knew me as a person before I ever went and did that. And it's one of those things, and that's the biggest, to me, that's been the biggest help is trying to, I'll call them warm sponsors, where at least you have an in, someone there, someone that knows someone there, something of that nature. It definitely helps. At least gives you a little bit of a connection there, and helps get your foot in the door and start a conversation. I mean, obviously you gotta be personable and be able to talk and hold an intelligent conversation. But, in the end, you got to be a personable person and someone that, is a benefit to, whatever company you're trying to get help from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. One of the sponsorship stories that I haven't shared on this podcast for a long time was just a unique situation where someone I kind of grew up with, him and I were at I think it was my brother's birthday party or something, and we were chatting a little bit, and he has his own business, and he's been looking at ways to reach new markets and things like that. And I had just started Impact Fuel, which is a charity fundraiser business for the motorsports world. And him and I were just kind of chatting and sharing ideas, and he was like, "Man, can I sponsor you?" I was like, yeah, why not?" And but the interesting thing is what his business is. His business is a massage parlor. So it's called,
oh, nice.
Yeah, it's called Wizard of Oz, and it's like
okay.
AHHS is Wizard of Oz. And he was real pumped about it, and I was like, "Hey, buddy, I don't really know if I'm gonna be able to help you right away." And he's like, "Oh no, just think about it like this: you ride all day, your back hurts, you need a massage." And I was like, "Okay, I see the connection. I think I can help sell this."
That's perfect. That's perfect. I wish I would have had that after my little catastrophe I had last weekend at Glen Helen. That would have been nice.
Right. Yeah, it was pretty cool. And he sponsored me for a little while, and he told me, he's like, "Let's just do it for like 2 or 3 months, little sponsorship package." And I was like, "Done."
Yeah, no, that's those ones are always nice. The ones they don't come around often, but the ones that they reach out to you, those ones the influx of sponsorship there on the people that just give you a call, it's very, very rare. I mean that's might have happened to me a couple times, but it's pretty rare. But those are nice to get for sure.
Yeah, one of the things that I like most about it is just it gave me, I think, a little bit different mindset about sponsorship, because I think I always viewed it as whatever your industry you're in, that's the only opportunity for sponsorship is staying with that industry. I never even considered having, sponsors outside of that. And then actually I ended up having like a lawn care company, which is, well, my dad's company, and then my father-in-law's company was a cab company, and then this Wizard of Oz, and I was like, oh, okay, there's a lot of other opportunities out there. You just have to kind of think about it.
Yeah, it's sponsorship. It's it's a little bit it's a little bit weird. You're asking people for money or for free product, and in turn you're going to promote them and do that. But it's hard, like within the industry, there's a lot of people promoting. So why am I better than the next guy? And if you think outside the box and get some companies that are outside, you don't have as much competition. Trying to get that sponsorship, you may not, you may get more for less, or however you want to look at it. It's it's obviously, if it's a numbers game. You go out there and if there's 3 people trying to get one sponsorship is a lot easier than if there's 12 people trying to get one sponsorship. So I feel like if you kind of go outside the box or think outside the box a little bit, that's definitely a help for sure.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of this quote from a person. Her name's Sally Hogshead. She's a entrepreneur that kind of helps people like put a unique spin on their brand, or like give your brand their brand a unique message. And there's this quote she came up with that's like, better isn't better, different is better. Something like that. And it's like, if you want to be better, you have to be different. And it's just a little bit different way of, well, different. It's a different way of looking at things. And it makes you really think, I guess, in a little bit more open way. Like, there's maybe just getting better at what you are doing now could be helpful, but what if you just put some unique spin on that?
Yeah, and you gotta be different. You gotta market yourself different. I mean, a lot of people market themselves the same way, and it's hard. I mean, everyone kind of falls into that rut with social media, or different. I mean, social media is an awesome way. It's we can talk about it a little bit later on kind of how I landed my first factory deal, and social media had a real big part of it. But there's other ways. There's other ways to help sponsors. There's other ways to attract people, and my biggest thing is, even I'm in the loan business, so it's a little more salesy than a lot of other jobs, and it's one of those things that I approach sponsorship the same way. Is you got to let people know what you're doing. No one's going to help you if they don't know what you do. And it's the same way for my work. Is no one's going to want a loan if they don't know that I'm a loan officer or that I do loans. It's one of those things that talk about it. I mean, parties, like you say, you picked up a sponsor at a party. It's just it's one of those things. You never know. There could be someone sitting there overhearing you, and oh, maybe this might work for my business, or maybe I should give this a shot. This sounds cool, or you know what I mean? It's one of those things where if you're not putting it out there, it's never going to happen. You got to get it out there and let people know what you're doing, and ask for what you want. That's the biggest thing.
That's a really good point. I really like how you said let people know what you're doing. I know it sounds obvious, but sometimes it's a little hard to, I don't know, maybe it just feels a little awkward to bring up what you're doing or what you're focused on or what your goals are, but it can be part of a natural conversation, and it can lead to really cool things.
For sure. No, and I mean, it's one of those things where, I mean, now I've been in razors for a few years, and man, I think I counted it the other day. I think there's 16 or 17 people that are real close friends and family that have Polaris razors. So, it's, at any family function or anything, like, that's 1,000% the topic of choice.
Yeah.
So it's just, that's what it is. And, you talk about it, people hear, like I said before, and it's just one of those things where, if, some random person knows what you're doing, they might have an interest in it. Who knows? They may not, but you never know. And to talk about it and just letting people know, what's going on, it definitely helps for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And also, I just want to pull out a point that you made too. You said ask for what you want, and there is no better way to ensure that you're not going to get what you want is if you never ask for it. So it's good to have that.
Yeah, and you know what? I got that advice, I think, from someone that was on your show before, Matt Martelli. From Mad Media. He gave me that advice, and I've gotten that advice from other people, and I feel like once once he told me that, it kind of finally stuck. It's, I've gone through the years and, didn't want to ask for too much because I didn't want a chance not getting any help by asking for too much. So it was one of those things where I'm trying to walk this fine line of, okay, this is what I need, but this is what I think they're going to want to give me. But in all reality, I didn't know what they were going to give me. I had no clue. So it's one of those things where, where you ask for what you want, and if they come back and they're not willing to give you what you want, then you kind of negotiate down from there. But it's, you got to go into it knowing what you want and what you need. And it's, it's good to have a budget put together of things you're going to need, or, with GBC, I know how many tires I'm going to go through during that year, whether I get flats or not, I know. So in my contract, I ask for, for what I'm going to need for the year. And, and I put an allotment there if I have some issues. And it's just one of those things that you got to kind of know what you need, and you got to for sure, ask for what you want.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. There's one last point that I wanted to pull out that you had made when you made the pitch to your boss at your work. You said, yeah, it was really easy. I just decided to kind of to walk in there and start talking to him, but you did some prep work ahead of time, right? You already knew you knew what the exposure was going to be. You knew what you were going to give him. You already had that proposal built and put together to pitch to him. So yeah, it was easy for him because he didn't have to ask questions, right? You had all the answers prepared.
Yeah, and you know what? That's the biggest thing. That's the biggest the biggest benefit to being prepared is, when he had questions, I knew exactly the answer. It wasn't like, oh, well, you can get this much exposure. It was, hey, this is what I need. This is what you're going to get. And this is how big your sticker will be on the side of my car. And you get two of them at that, because I race two cars. So, and for him, it was like, it was a no-brainer. I'm racing in Southern California, doing a majority of my races. So Southern California, Arizona, Nevada, we do loans, all in that area. So it was, for him, yeah, there wasn't any television involved, yet, but still, just being at the races. And you know what? I got a couple of deals from it this year. I got a couple of work deals from my racing. So it was one of those things where, and it's for him, for my boss, it's one of those deals where, hey, I let him know, hey, you know what, I got this deal, and I got this deal from the racing. So, I want to show him that there's value there, and that there is value to sponsoring me, and, being a marketing partner with me, value to his business, value for me. And it's one of those things too. It kind of works out for us here, at work, just because, Fridays I'm off a lot of times because I'm traveling to the races or things of that nature. So, I'm still, I got my phone on me. I'm still working, but during the travel days, I'm still trying to work, but I'm also advertising. So, I'm gone from work, but there is a little bit of advertising going on, and people are seeing the name. And so, that part works out, but for sure, you got to be prepared. You got to know what you're looking for, and you got to know what your sponsors are going to be looking for. There's a reason they're going to help people out. You got to bring some value there. And on the loan side of things, and even with my boss, it was like, hey, this is what I think we can do. And he asked me a couple of questions. I had the answers to, and, we were off and running. So.
I maybe kind of think of something there. I think it came out of a book that I read. I talk about this book a lot, Motorsports Marketing and Sponsorship. It was written by Alex Stryler, and he gave some different examples of what sponsors might be looking for. Like, some sponsors are looking to sell more of their product, right? Like, that's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But I think he gave some examples in that book too about sponsors who might just be truly, sponsoring a racer or something like that to get another relationship built. Like, maybe they actually want to partner with one of your title sponsors, so they just want to be on the same car as you, so that they can get a connection there, build a relationship, and maybe come up with some joint venture. Or maybe they just want to do brand building, and maybe they're not actually interested in selling product this year. Maybe they want to just build their brand up, associate them with an industry, and then start selling product next year. So it's kind of interesting thinking about those different needs or desires that come through sponsorship, because not every company is going to have the exact same goal in mind.
No, and for sure, and that's even versus having companies outside the industry versus inside the industry. Well, the companies inside the industry, they want you to sell product. They want you to develop product, and that's that's a lot of my strategy with sponsors and things like that. Gates is another sponsor. I don't know if I mentioned them before or not. Gates performance belts. They make belts for the cars. They flew a couple engineers out to my house from Texas, and man, we did testing, and I must have run 10 tanks of fuel through my car just to do some belt testing, and that's one of the things where you got to give back to sponsors. Is it fun? Yeah, sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. There's days where it was 110 out and I wanted to be swimming and be at the beach. I didn't want to be out in the desert hammering laps out trying to figure out what's going to last and what's not going to last in terms of parts. So that's the thing. You gotta be willing to help your sponsors in other ways other than just promoting them on social media. A lot of these companies, they want to better their product. Some products are awesome already, but there's been times throughout my career where the product that I was running maybe was inferior to another company, but they want to get to that next level. So you gotta work through the problems and give them your feedback on what way to make something better. So there's a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different ways to give back to the different sponsors for sure.
I am really glad that you called out that like R&D testing type function. That was something we talked about in episode 26 of this podcast with Jared Heshka. He's a brand manager at MBRP Power Sports, and that was one thing he said in one of their sponsorship campaigns. The entire intent was to just get R&D for a new snowcross can that they were putting together. That was it. Like, they were not looking to sell cans that year. They purely just wanted the feedback from the racers so that they could go and make a better snowcross race can.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot to do with Polaris and Walker Evans Racing, these different companies. It's they want you to be out there with their product and they want you to win. But if you can if they can make a car and their racers go race it and win and don't break parts or break certain things, it's something that they can put in into their cars for the following year and make a better car for the consumer ultimately, where you're not going to have issues, you're not going to have failures of certain parts. So that's a big thing. A lot of these companies, they want R&D. It's they sponsor for a reason. Like I said, they want you to win races and they want you to promote, but they're also trying to make their product better. And a lot of companies, Gates was one of those companies that when their first belt came out, it may not have been the best, but we worked through it and we got something that, that's really, really competitive with some of the, the best belt companies out there. And they're a huge company. They're enormous. They do all kinds of belts for, seems like every tractor that's ever been made. But the power sports side of things were kind of new to them when I first hooked up with them, and we built a relationship, man. I've known John Ellis over there at Gates for 4 or 5 years now, and he's like family. He flies out and visits, and it's one of those cool relationships that you don't always get with sponsors, but they're the good ones and the ones that you'll have for a long time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, one of the things that I want to make sure we talked about was how you connected with Polaris, that's a fairly recent story. It's probably still fresh in your mind. So, would you be willing to then walk us through how you made that connection and how you ultimately end up getting a factory deal?
For sure. No, it was kind of a long process, honestly. I thought in 2013 I deserved a factory Polaris ride in my first year, but what I thought and what the industry thought, were two completely different things. And hey, I didn't deserve it in my first year. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I won a lot of races and I did pretty good, but I had a lot to learn with, keeping my composure at races and being someone that, that can be branded and and bring benefit to a company. So I had a lot to learn, from that aspect of things. But it really, honestly, it started 2015. I sent a resume, and it kind of bounced around a little bit. I got a little bit of feedback, and it was nothing really happened. 2016 rolled around. I had some good races, and when I won at San Hollow, it was a pretty good win. I actually battled with RJ Anderson, who at the time, which he still is. He's a factory Polaris guy, and kind of been their go-to for a long time, and still is. And we battled back and forth, and it was awesome. It was a fun race. And after that, I needed some parts, man. So I got a hold of Polaris, and they put me on a little parts program. I mean, I was still paying for parts, but it helped. Every little bit helps when you're trying to be competitive. So they put me on a little parts budget, and I was dealing with a parts guy at Polaris that is kind of in a little bit separate area. He actually runs some of their snow division. So it was separate for me, and I was getting towards the end of the year in 2016. It was, I believe, what was it? July, I think, is when it was. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna give this a shot. I direct messaged someone from Polaris. I'm not gonna say his name because I don't want him to get a bunch of direct messages. But I direct messaged him on Instagram, and I kind of, I made it short and sweet, but I let him know at the time I was leading points in a car that was a 2014. And, it was a couple years old, and, I was being competitive with the factory guys at that time. And I just, I let him know. I said, hey, man, I've won some races. I'm leading points right now. It's, it's been a pretty good year for me, and I need some help. If I'm going to stay competitive, I need to try to get some help from you guys. And I'm willing to take any help you have. And, man, the next day I had a message in my inbox on Instagram, and it was like he said, hey, send me an email. So that was the first, my first foot in the door, really, with the marketing side of Polaris, and sent him an email. And how it is, people get busy, and I didn't hear anything back, and it was a couple of weeks, and I'm like, oh man, here we go again, that nothing's going to happen. And so I sent him an email again. I think I sent him two, 3 emails, and he finally got back to me and just said, and he it was short and sweet, but it was like, hey, let me know what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. And that for me was, kind of the green light to start asking for what I needed. And, man, he emailed me back and said, hey, I'm going to put you in contact with this guy, give him a call and see what we can work out. And, that was started in July, and I think I signed my contract somewhere in between August and September of 2016. So, it took a couple months there to get everything lined up. And I called and got on the phone with the guy that handled the sponsorship at that time. And I told him, hey, this is what I'm looking for. And he said, all right, let's do it. And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Let's do it. And it was, it was a big thing for me. It's, Polaris. I've always been in a Polaris, ever since I started racing side by sides. It's always been Polaris. So they were my, my go-to, my number one. In my opinion, they have the best, most competitive car out there. So, it was a no-brainer for me, and I'd been racing them for a long time. So, when I got the okay on that, over the phone, it was kind of a big relief. Really, towards the end of 2016, I was debating on if I was even going to be able to race the next year. Mm-hmm. It's expensive. It's expensive to be competitive. You got to, you go through some parts, and so it's hard. So it was one of those things where I was kind of rethinking my whole program, and that kind of got dropped in my lap at the right time. I wouldn't say it got dropped in my lap. I worked real hard for it, and and put in time to make that connection and create that relationship to be able to become a factory guy. So it was definitely a relief. I like I said, I got the okay over the phone, and I told the guy, hey man, I've been burned in the past. Can you please send me an email to confirm it? Mm-hmm. I wanted to make sure I heard it right. So So he sent me an email a couple hours later, and I signed a contract that a couple of weeks after that, before the last round of the series, and man, the rest is history. Got my cars, and I've done good for them this year. My first weekend out, and being a factory guy, I won, and I've won a lot this year. I've done pretty good. So it's been a fun ride. It's what they say. It's anything worth it is not easy, and it definitely wasn't easy. But I'm glad I stuck with it. It's definitely been a fun ride, and there's been a lot of people that have helped me along the way, and it's been a pretty cool process.
Oh, that's cool, man. Such a good story, and I actually want to go back and ask a question, and I don't want you to say the person's name still, because
Okay.
I don't want them getting the direct messages. But how did you know the person's name? How did you figure out the right person to send a direct message to?
It's a guy that's been around for a while, but
Uh-huh.
it's one of those things. I did my research. I mean,
Yep.
and yeah, you can call it Instagram stalking or Facebook stalking or whatever you want to
Yeah,
call it.
or you can call it research.
Yeah, you gotta you understand. You gotta do what you gotta do to make contact. So, I just looked around, and I kind of looked at people that seemed to be in a lot of other people's posts, and did some research online and tried to figure a few things out there, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of came to the conclusion myself. The guy, he's been around for a little while, and he's a lot of people know exactly who I'm talking about, and you probably do too. But
No worries, no worries.
he's a good guy, and he he's kind of a big name guy, and I searched around, and he seemed. If I was doing it, I wanted to go directly to the top, and he seemed like as high as I can go, as high as I could find. So I went directly to him, and it worked out. So I'm glad I did. I wanted to recall the message as soon as I sent it, but I didn't, and I'm glad I didn't. And there's been a lot of people. Rusty, I think Rusty Baptist, he hooked us up.
Mm-hmm.
He hooked us up. That guy, he was the first. Really, he's the first person I ever knew in the UTV industry. That hands down. He'd be at dirt series races taking photos for UTV Underground, and he I know he put my name in front of a lot of people, and I'm super appreciative of that. And
Mm-hmm.
I was given an opportunity, and I capitalized on it, and it's worked out. So I got to give a big thanks to him. He's definitely helped me along the way, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate him reaching out, because I mean he gave me some pretty good. He gave me a pretty good idea of how informative you were going to be on this episode, and I think it's been panning out, man. I've been loving hearing all these good examples, so I'm appreciative to him for making this recommendation and getting us connected.
Yeah, no, he's done this. He's done this for me, kind of throughout my career, and put me in contact with the right people, or at least kept my name in the mix. And yeah, I mean, you gotta be fast, or you gotta have the whole package. It's not being fast at the races. It's being fast at the races, and posting on social media, and helping sponsors out, giving them feedback, all that. It's not just any one thing that's going to get you the help. It seems like you got to have a whole package, and be well spoken. Not saying that I'm some awesome speaker, but you got to be well spoken, and a likable person. And it's that's been the tough part. It's not always easy to to be likable. There's sponsors where we've kind of bashed our heads together, and bumped heads, and not seen eye to eye. But at the end of the day, they're a sponsor, and it's like a job. You don't always love your boss, but it's something you got to you got to show up for work, and you got to do things the right way if you want to keep your job. And that's how I look at it. For me, in terms of sponsorship, it's a job. It's I want to be prepared. I want to be prepared for work. I want to be prepared for my sponsors and what they're going to ask, and be a benefit to their company. So it's definitely you got to definitely be prepared, and take it serious.
Mm-hmm. Well, a couple things I want to pull out of that. I mean, we had talked a little bit in the pre-interview about this, and you made a comment about being burned in the past on something, and that maybe sometimes the sponsors and yourself had kind of bumped heads. So without getting into like the names of the companies or anything like that, can you give us just one or two examples about a time when things didn't go that great with a sponsorship, and maybe what you learned from it?
Yeah, and you know what? It's not necessarily that things didn't go great with with those sponsors or even potential sponsors. A lot of it hasn't really been people that I had contracts signed with. They were potential sponsors for the following year, something of that nature. And for me, and it kind of all boils down to the ask for what you want thing. And it seems like when I've been vague about what I want or what I need, it's always ended bad. In 2013, I dealt with a sponsor, and in the middle of the year, before I ever started winning, he kind of told me I was going to get some free stuff the following year if I did good and maybe won a couple of races, and I won the rest of the series, and I won every race the rest of that series and won the championship, and I didn't get any help from them, and that's one of the things where it's it was kind of deflating for me. I was bummed. It's like, man, what do you mean I'm not going to get any help? I did what I said I was going to do and did what you told me to do. And, it's just one of those things where I was a little bit vague, and maybe they were too. But it's one of those things where you gotta nail down what you want and ask for it. It's, no one's going to just give you something because they think you need it. It's something you got to ask for it for sure.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Well, before we move into the main event, I just have maybe one last question to ask you about social media. So what would you say is kind of like your social media, and how have you used that to your advantage with attracting and retaining sponsors?
It's one of those things. I have a fairly clean social media. I mean, I'm not posting a bunch of stuff I shouldn't be, or I try to stay neutral on a lot of things. But it's my social media, my Instagram. I have Instagram and Facebook, and I use both of those as personal as well as racing. A lot of people I've people in the past have told me, oh, you should make only a racing one, or however. But you look at people like R.J. Anderson or B.J. Baldwin, some of these other guys. Yeah, those are huge name guys that I'm nowhere near yet. But they all have, their social media. It's their lives. It's what they're doing that day. Or so for me, I post racing photos or family photos, things of that. It's my kids are all about razors, so I'll post my kids in a razor or something like that. To it gives Polaris some exposure, and it's still. People don't necessarily want to see the same thing every day. Sponsors don't want to see the same thing every day. So I try to break it up and, kind of post different things that I'm doing or anything like that. But, it's all boiling down to, I tag my sponsors and all that. And, it's content. You gotta post a lot of stuff. You gotta post a lot. I mean, I could probably scroll through my feed right now and RJ or BJ Baldwin or Bryce Menzies, any of these guys have probably posted something in the last couple hours. So it's, it's one of those things. It's content, and you need to have good content. It's hard. I'm pretty shy, and I'm not really one to boast about anything I have but it's the way that it has to be done. We're in the digital age. A lot of people want to see that, and people want to see what you have, or people want to see what you're doing. So you got to do it, and it's hard for me sometimes, but it's something that's got to be done for sure.
Yeah, and I've definitely had people on the show that have talked about their social media strategy. I ask it in almost every single interview, and it's almost always different. And I think the only conclusion I can come to is the best suggestion is be yourself. So I know Amy Hood, for example, was on episode 7. If you look at her social media, it's similar to BJ Baldwin's. There's like a ton of, like on Instagram, ton of her stories, and only a certain percentage of them are her actually, driving a monster truck or ripping a dirt bike. And then there's other ones like of her out in the town or hanging out with a friend, and it is a pretty interesting mixture, and she has a huge following. Same with BJ Baldwin. I mean, if you look at BJ Baldwin's Insta stories, it's like his kid in the crib, and then like him hanging out with his wife, and then him shooting a gun, and then him like racing a truck, and he might have like 50 stories in a row on one given day, and it's
Yeah, no, and it's good, and I feel like it casts a pretty big canvas, you know, of people that you're going to draw. You have his wife, his kids, and obviously he's a very successful off-road racer, and it seems like he's a pretty good shot with a AR too. So so
right.
you're canvassing over a big audience there. So it's good, I think. I mean, personally for me, it's something, it's how you want to brand yourself. And for me, it's, I race razors and I love it. Don't get me wrong. I'm super thankful for everything I have, but that's not the only thing I do. And
Mm-hmm.
I do other things. I have a family, and the racing part of it is super, super, super serious for me. So, there is a lot of that, but I have a family on top of that. And you can say unfortunately or not, but I got a day job and I got to make money. So racing side of it is just a part of my life. So it's one of those things where, I use the social media. It's a majority of racing, but there's a little bit of a mixture in there every now and again. And, you got to wish your wife happy birthday on Instagram or you're in trouble, right?
Right. That's very true. That's very true. All right, well, that's good stuff, man. Lots of good information on sponsorship. Lots of good examples there. The next thing I want to do, though, is talk a little bit about mindset, just because, I think it's a big part of people reaching out to a sponsor and feeling comfortable with themselves and asking for, what they really want. A lot of things we've been talking about, a lot of that does revolve around mindset. So I think one of those things, too, is you have to have a certain mindset to be able to get around obstacles. So I want to maybe understand a time when you ran into a big obstacle and how did you overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the biggest obstacle is, I like to call sponsors on the phone. I know it might be a little bit old school, compared to an email or something like that, but I like to call and hear their voice and hear if they're frustrated and don't want to talk to me, or you can tell a lot in the tone of a person's voice. So the phone call is big for me, and the biggest thing to overcome really is getting to the right person. I mean, even with Polaris, I dealt with a lot of people prior to actually getting a sponsorship, and it's getting to the right people that can make a decision. That seems like the hardest part, and the best way I've found to actually overcome that is do your research, figure out who you need to talk to, and ask for that person, and don't really take no for an answer. And if someone says, oh, I can't get you to them, call back and keep calling. It's one of those things. Yeah, people may get annoyed, but it's, the saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So,
Yeah.
Try to be the squeaky wheel. And yeah, there's a certain point. Don't get annoying. No one wants to, no one wants to give any handouts to any people that are annoying, but you gotta get to the right people. And that's a pretty big obstacle. That's, for me, it's even with some bigger companies, and, I'm not exactly where I want to be in terms of sponsorship. You always want more. You never want to get content, but it's hard. It's not always easy to find the right person. But the internet's a pretty powerful tool. So if you get on there and you do your research and you find who you're supposed to talk to, a lot of times you end up in a better position in the long run, for sure. It takes time, but you got to work for it.
Mm-hmm. One of the platforms that I started using to make good connections with what I would say are the right people at businesses as well is LinkedIn. So we don't talk about LinkedIn very much on this podcast from a social media strategy, but honestly, it's a pretty cool platform for you to find out who those people are. A lot of people on LinkedIn, they're linked to the company that they work for. They have their title posted. They're usually in their title. They outline what their job responsibilities are, and you can go to some of the companies that you're interested in learning more about and find some people to connect with on there. And as long as you have a solid built out profile yourself, where you look like you're a legitimate person, it makes it pretty easy to connect. I know I've gotten interviews just based off of my interactions on LinkedIn. That's actually how I originally connected with Matt Martelli from Mad Media. He was on this podcast, episode 31, and that's how I found him, was on LinkedIn. I was searching around. I was like, ooh, Mad Media. Oh, I love Mad Media. I'd love to talk to somebody from there. And I was like, oh, why don't I just connect with this guy. I was like, oh yeah, and I found Matt Martelli as a result, and you can do the same thing.
Yeah, no, I've used LinkedIn. I have a profile that's, it's not completely built out, but I use just kind of for searching for people really,
Mm-hmm.
and I've gotten phone numbers. I mean, prior to signing my contract with Polaris last year, I had actually reached out to a couple other manufacturers, and I was able to find the info that I needed to get directly to the guy in charge, right there on LinkedIn, and sometimes they're crazy enough to list their cell phone number, and it's one of those things. I'm kind of a shy person. It's hard, but you call them. You have a goal. I have a goal set in mind that, hey, this is what I want, and no one's going to give it to me unless I ask. So you gotta sometimes make those tough phone calls with those people, and I've definitely used LinkedIn to find some of those phone numbers for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It's just another tool if people haven't used it before. I mean, I wouldn't recommend just hopping on it and start reaching out. I think it's good to have a little bit of your profile built out, but it's not that difficult to do, and you'll be amazed at how many other people you can find connections with. And then once you start making connections, and all of a sudden you just see more and more people that that you're going to be interested in knowing more about. So it's a pretty interesting platform. I'd highly recommend it. Um, Good. Well, I think my next question for you is going to be around support. I think it's pretty important for people to have a strong support network to be successful in racing, obviously, but also just in from a mental standpoint, an emotional standpoint. So, who would you say has been your biggest supporter and why?
I mean, from an actual racing standpoint or a sponsor standpoint, I gotta go with Polaris and Walker Evans. I mean, they've been there
Mm-hmm.
for a long time, or Walker's been there for a long time, and given me tons of support. And when the shock setting wasn't right, they were willing to change it even if they thought it was wrong. And we've developed a pretty good relationship. I deal with Brian over there, and even Randy some. So it's been they've been awesome. I mean, obviously, I probably wouldn't be racing if it wasn't for Polaris' support. But that's from the sponsorship side of things. But from the mental side of things, it's my family. I mean, my dad has been right there, since day one, and kind of pushed me, in this direction. I wanted it too, but kind of at least gave me the tools to be able to do it. And my wife has been super supportive at times. Maybe she, wanted me to go do something else, but she's always been supportive and been there. And it's hard. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and it takes time. I mean, I prep my own cars and I do all that, so it takes time. And we've kind of developed a little strategy, and I start work at 7:30 in the morning, and I'll get up in the morning at 4:30 and go work on race cars and prep race cars before I go to work.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, it's racing, but I have kids, and I want to be a dad. I want to be there for them, and my dad was always there for me, and this kind of leads into the whole, what and who inspires me. It's my dad. He's always been there, and yeah, I guess it's kind of cliche. You probably get that a lot. People look up to people look up to their dad, but it's at the end of the day, the guy's he's done everything he possibly could do to give us kids every opportunity, whether it be in racing or just in life in general. And he's he's been a big supporter, and he's always been there. His company, Bradco Construction, was my first, I guess you can say, quote unquote sponsor. But there's always been, he's spending a lot less now than he ever has with my racing, and at times he was funding the whole thing. So it's he's been there, and he's supported, and I'm glad that he's been able to kind of take a step back and enjoy it a little more. He still helps me prep cars and things of that nature, but from the funding side of things, he's been able to take a little bit of a step back. Not all the way. He's still there, and he's still helping out, but he enjoys it. He goes to the races with me, and I've been able to get him bits and pieces for his own car, his own play car, and I've helped him get a car through Polaris, and it's been cool to help him out and kind of give back to him. And I'm super thankful for them, and they've always been there. My family's always been there, my wife and kids, and it's kind of a family affair. When we go to the races, I have 2 nephews that race. pretty competitively and a niece that races, and it's one of those deals where it's we're going as a family, and a lot of people go camping and all that. We go to the races and we camp. That's that's how it works. So it's been cool. It's fun. It's fun to bring everyone along the way, and kind of along for the ride. It's it's not always been a smooth ride, but it's been fun, and I've made mistakes throughout my career, and just with attitude or things like that. Younger, I lost my temper a couple times, and the family's always there to keep you in check. So you gotta do right by them, and it helps out for sure in the long run.
Oh, that's good. You're right, the dad and mom are definitely the most common response to that question, but there's nothing wrong with that because the rationale is the same, and it makes perfect sense. One thing I wanted to say, kind of around what you had mentioned with your dad about how he's backed off a little bit on the from the sponsorship standpoint. One of the things that I've noticed, because I would say for me, I've had a really good support network from my dad and my father-in-law. They were some of my first sponsors when I launched Impact Fuel in May of 2016. They were one of the first people, and still I literally tell them stop. I was like, do not sponsor me anymore. Stop sending me money, and they're like, no. We still believe in this. We'd like to continue. I'm like, no, stop it.
Yeah, that's been the big part of even mine, and my dad. It's like your dad. He probably enjoys what you're doing with with your company, and like my dad enjoys what I'm doing with my racing. He likes it. It's something that he's super into. So he has a pretty decent sized shop at his house. That's where all my race cars are, and I'll go up there on the weekend, and there'll be new parts laying on the table, or he's done this or he's done that on the car, and I'm just like thinking to myself, Ty, why are you spending money on this? You shouldn't be. And he still wants to, and as much as he says he doesn't want to, he does. He still does it. He's always been the guy right there, in the back, maybe not getting all the love on social media or anything like that, but he's been in the background kind of making the whole program stay alive. So that part's it's been pretty cool, and we're pretty close. Before I started doing loans, I worked for him, and so at that time we were together 7 days a week. I worked for him, and then we work on cars on the weekends, and I would say our relationship's gotten better as I moved on and gone and worked at another place, and we don't see each other so much, but he's my dad, and he's always been there, and he's definitely been a huge supporter of kind of everything I'm doing, whether it's racing or, just in life. So that part's been pretty cool.
Yeah, certainly. Well, cool. I have one other question in this section, and then we'll kind of wrap up. So what would you say is next for you in your motorsports career?
It's hard to say. I really love razors. I come from a motocross background, and razor side-by-side racing to me is the closest thing that you're going to get to being on a dirt bike and be in a cage, being a little bit safer. So for me, the razors they're awesome. If I would say if I'm going anywhere, I'd like to try to do some Lucas truck stuff, or something in a little bit bigger truck, or something like that. I don't really have much plans right now. It's to me that for me to be competitive, it takes a certain amount of money, and it takes a lot of money to be competitive in that. And you're talking a couple $100,000 a year, and you got a truck, and you got to have support and stuff like that. So for me, I don't know that that's going to happen next year, but I think it's definitely possible. And I've been racing razors now for 5 years, and I've steadily built every year. My program's got stronger and stronger every year, and it looks like 2018's going to be better than it was in 2017. So it's one of those things where I'm building, and who knows, in a couple of years you might see me on TV racing a truck. I don't know.
Oh, that's cool. Awesome. Well, hey, we're at the finish line now, so that's where we're going to wrap up. What would you say is one thing that our listeners should kind of take away from this conversation?
Just, don't lose yourself. It's one of those things where, a lot of people think, oh, I need to be this or I need to be that to to get sponsors, and you never know, sponsors, they want stuff that's different. So just, it sounds weird to say, but be yourself and brand yourself. You need to brand yourself in a way that sponsors look at you with some value, and be professional. And to me, being professional is, when you go to the races, have your motorhome clean, or when you go to the races, your cars need to be clean. You need to, you got to brand yourself in a way that people see value and value in what they're giving you. So you gotta create a brand and represent yourself in a professional manner.
Yeah, that's great. No, that's awesome. What is the best way for us as listeners to connect with you?
Man, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram. I'm pretty sure all my contact info is on my Instagram, so you can get me there and send me an email, or I think my phone number is even on there. Send me a text, and I've gotten sponsors through social media, like I said before, and that's really the best way to get in contact with me. And I'm pretty good about getting back to people. It may take me a day or two, but reach out if you have any questions. I'm definitely willing to help, and I appreciate your time, and I appreciate everyone listening.
Yeah, awesome, and we appreciate your time. So I think at this point, Cody, we're gonna end with this: have fun and ride safe.
Alrighty, thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast. And hopefully you're getting value out of this whole thing. And that's what this is for you to get some value, to make some changes in your life, and ultimately make motorsports better. I really would love for you to head over to iTunes and leaving a rating and review. Let us know where your head's at, what you think of the show. And also, it's awesome if you subscribe to this so you don't miss upcoming guests. So specifically, Thomas Affelt of Sledders R Us is coming on. Matt Allred of Garage Built Racing is going to follow him. And then I have a surprise fan favorite lined up for episode 50. I'm not going to share who that is yet, but it's a good one. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss those guests. Special thanks goes out to our sponsors, SolderWeld, Bold Racing, and TopThePodium.com. Without them, we wouldn't be able to keep doing this. We wouldn't be able to keep bringing new guests in and trying to give you this much value. Now, make sure you are following us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. That's the best way to keep in touch with the guests and the goings on with the podcast. But there's one last thing I'd like to talk to you about, and that's Impact Fuel. It's an online community aimed at turning your riding experiences into sponsor-funded charitable donations. By posting your mileage or your podium on social media and tagging or mentioning Impact Fuel, you're creating a financial donation for Impact Fuel's featured charity for that month. And you don't even have to actually give any money. So all of the money is provided by our sponsors and also by Impact Fuel. To find out more about how it all works, go over to impactfuel.org or check us out on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Until next time, have fun and ride safe.